So we decided that we were going to go on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, on this off-roading trip, and my son was going to come with us and my nephew, and they were both really excited to go. And so that morning, when Dawn had shown up, I went in to go tell the boys, hey, Dawn's here, we're going to go off-roading now. And they both had a very peculiar look on their face, like they knew something, or like it was kind of eerie. They just kind of looked at each other and looked at me and said, you know, we're just gonna stay here and play Legos. And looking back, I probably should have figured out that there was something going on and maybe reconsider, but I didn't. I was so excited about going on this trip because I love off-roading. So Dawn and I decided we were going to take off without them. They didn't want to go with us, so we started heading up towards Lytle Creek, and we were going to play in the dirt areas and climb some hills, maybe splash through some old mud puddles or whatever we could find, and test out his four-wheel drive. So we took off. We did some hill climbing. We did a little bit of everything up in the hills there, and then we stumbled upon a fire road that we hadn't seen before in the previous times we'd been off-roading up there.
And so anyway, we started up a fire road. We'd never been up this one before, and we just started driving it. And there was a few points where we kind of oohed and awed as we went through areas, and then we came around a corner, and we had been talking on our phones. I had mine on speaker. And we were talking on it, and all of a sudden I lost communication.
Suddenly, the phone dropped signal. So as this phone dropped signal, I picked it up, stopped the vehicle, and started to dial to see if I can get Dawn back on the line again. So I try to dial, and the phone doesn't connect. It's got no signal. So I hung up, I tried to dial again, still no signal.
He stopped, so I figured we'd kind of both looked ahead, and there's a point where you just go, you know, you're not sure what's up there. It's about time to turn around. You know the road behind you and how long it took you to get in there. And so we were probably about that point. And he had stopped for the same reason.
And that's when I decided I was just going to get out and go talk to him, because we kind of figured we're getting towards the end of the road. It's kind of getting late. We want to circle around and go back before it starts getting dark. You know, all these different things go through your mind. So I went to set the phone down to release my seatbelt so I could get out. And just as I did that, I realized the vehicle felt like it was being pushed. And I'm parked on flat ground, and it just feels like I'm being pushed sideways.
I don't remember if I had my seatbelt off yet or not, but I was getting ready to, and all of a sudden I just saw his car slide sideways. And it wasn't like it moved forward and slid. It just slid, just went sideways.
I realized this is really serious. And I remember thinking, Jesus, I actually said it out loud, Jesus, I need your help. And just as I said that, the vehicle just did a large drop, and I just started hearing the crunching. And I just remember after it did the first drop, it just started picking up speed, and I was rolling down a very steep hill. I didn't know how far it was. I didn't know what kind of debris was going to be in the way. I just remember grabbing onto the steering wheel and pulling my head towards the center of the vehicle and hoping that nothing was going to penetrate through the truck. No rocks or tree branches or anything, and the truck was just being hit with rocks, and I felt like I knocked over trees. It was just so much crunching and wood breaking and brush being crunched, and it was just, I mean, it was happening so fast. I had several thoughts that traveled through my mind during that time. I remember thinking, my family, I mean, how is this gonna turn out? Am I gonna live through this? Am I gonna be injured? What's gonna happen to me? I remember thinking, I'm about to meet Jesus.
His truck was the size of a toy at the bottom of the canyon. It was something that I looked at, and you don't envision that kind of thing. There's nothing you can do. I've seen in fishing trips, you know, cars at the bottom of a hill that people have purposely driven off, but I've never seen a vehicle that I'm involved with this person doing this, and it's now down there. And I'm not hearing anything out of him. I was just talking to him. And he may be dead.
I'm alive. I'm okay. I'm not even injured. You know, this is, oh my gosh, God, thank you. I was just amazed. And I actually said it out loud. Thank you, God, you know. And then all these other things are racing through my mind. I'm hearing water running right next to me. I'm sitting on the driver's, you know, I'm laying on the driver's side of the truck, and I'm hearing water running. So, you know, I think back now and I go, if that water, you know, is coming, is it going to fill up in my truck? Is there a possibility of drowning? You know, what's happening? I just remember this water's just rushing below me, and there's rocks in the water, and I'm looking at these rocks, and I remember just crunched up looking at it and seeing all this water flowing and seeing the rocks, you know, 8 inches from my head, where I could have, I mean, just a little bit harder of an impact, and my head would have hit the rock. It could have killed me instantly. It was weird. I just had a smooth landing, like Jesus had really heard my prayers, and the truck just came to a nice slow stop.
I started yelling for him, Dan, are you okay? Dan, are you okay? And he cracked the door open and yelled out, stay there, I'm okay, you know. And
I proceeded to climb out. I was able to lift the door and get my arms through and just try, I mean, with every bit of muscle I had in me to squeeze out the door opening. And when I was able to get out that door opening, I got my upper body through, and I was able to hold the door open and get my feet out. And I realized that I had landed right in the middle of this tight ravine. It was a drop off, and my truck had landed right in it, and this side was just a big steep cliff. So my truck, when it had rolled, it had landed and slowly come down as the shocks and tires compressed, and it had squeezed me into a nice, it was like perfectly fitted for my vehicle. And you know, I think back now of all the miracles that God did through that. I'm just amazed, absolutely amazed.
all I could think is when he was going down was that God had his hands on him, just holding him that whole time, because there's no way you could roll that many times. 6 times rolling over sideways on a vehicle is, at that steep, is pretty intense. So he gets up to the top, and of course we hugged each other. We were so happy to see each other alive, and he was walking, and he didn't have a broken arm or anything going on there. And we started looking at the area, and you could literally see, we took a picture, you could see where the road was there, and then there was a slick sideways where the ground had gotten soft under the tire, and that's where his tire slid off the road. And we both were just at awe, just how did this happen? Why would this happen? You know, it's just amazing. And we realized that we needed to get out of there.
Okay, so when I came back from my off-roading trip, I came in the front door and met my wife at the front door.
And I asked him how his trip went and how much fun they had.
And I told her that I had wrecked the truck, that I had rolled it.
And I asked, well, did you have it towed back here, or how much damage? Like, do we need to get a rent-a-car, or where can we drop it off to get it fixed?
And that's when I explained to her how bad the accident really was, and then we just held each other's hands and cried and hugged, and it was very emotional experience.
Later the next day, I went up with Pastor Jeff and a group, and we were going to go do some salvage work on it and get the thing out. And I was the one who knew how to get there.
We loaded up our gear the next morning and called a couple of friends. Joe Billheimer and Cameron Miller came. Brad Garner, my other friend, the climbing friend, and myself, the 4 of us met. And then Don showed up, and he was going to be our guide back up there because Don Hayes was up there with Dan when it happened. And we started to drive up the roads, and I to be really honest, I was panicky the whole way up.
Oh, this is not good. Don't stop, Don. Don't stop. This is not where I want to stop.
And I remember the whole way up thinking, dear God, just keep our cars on the road, because obviously it's not safe. Obviously the road's not safe.
And we went through an area, and I went through a puddle, and all of a sudden I noticed in front of me there was just something different about this road. It had a slight berm on it and at a slight angle, and we couldn't figure out. I just kind of looked at it, and I thought, well, I'll just keep going down this a little further. And all of a sudden I get right on that berm, and of course it's a little muddy, so the back end kind of kicked a little bit, and I just went over it, and he goes, "It's back there." And I said, "What's back there?" "Dan's truck is back there." And I realized we had to go back over this.
Don's truck just about slid into the same spot where Dan went off the road. My truck was sliding into that same spot. And now we're on the other side of that spot, and we're going to have to go back over it to get home.
We have to turn around, and we'll have to go at it. We went through a little instructing on how we should go over this thing, so we didn't wind up down there with his truck. We went over it and got the safety. He pulled his up the hill. I kept mine down there to tie ropes onto and whatever we needed to do.
Down about 100 and something feet, we couldn't tell exactly how far, but they're this tiny, smashed up white Toyota truck. I've seen car crashes before. I've been in some crazy stuff, and I've seen other people survive some crazy stuff. And I can tell you that of all the stuff I've seen, this is the crash I would have expected somebody to die in.
And we sent Cameron and Joe down the hill with lights and rope and proper equipment to go down there. And they went down and did a little salvaging there.
Eventually, it probably took me, I'd say, probably 5 or 6 minutes to get all the way down. You know, they kept having, there was one point where their ropes weren't long enough. They had to, I think I had to stop, and they had to hook me into a longer rope so I could go even further. Finally, I just had to unclip and climb the last little bit down to the truck itself. So I'm down there, and I'm trying to take everything in. I look at Dan's truck, and it's trashed. Your tiny window that doesn't let you see anything has broken out, along with the taillight. There's some water. You know, there's broken everything. There's broken windows. I can see the roof rack just maybe 20 feet away from the vehicle, still on the hillside. I can see debris in the river next to the truck. How did he get out? You know, he's got to have some just serious adrenaline pumping, and first of all, to not be injured, and then to be able to get out of the truck was just a task, and just, you know, a testament to how much he was protected, you know, by God, to be able to get out after going through that whole experience in the first place.
It took all of our energy to get Joe and Cameron pulled back up out of there, because especially once they picked up some of the heavier equipment, there's just no way that anybody could have climbed out of there. And yet, you know, and the day before, I really believe angels had literally carried Dan up the side of that cliff, because seeing how hard it was for Joe and Cameron to get down and then to get back up, and seeing the result of the squishy mud and the thickness of the overgrowth, and it was only God. Only God could have got him up out of there.
We just grabbed everything we could. It was getting dark. I'm trying to, you know, help a little bit to pull some of my own weight to get up the hill. I'm grabbing onto, you know, rocks, but they're just crumbling and falling down. I'm grabbing onto brush, and they're just full-on roots pulling out of the side of the hill, because the hill's so wet. And I don't think it had rained since we had been up there. It's just the hill was that slippery and that wet. And I'm grabbing onto roots, and they're just snapping. You know, I'm trying to do what I can to help pull myself up, but I need a lot of help from the guys. They're keeping my climb rope at tension the entire time to pull as much of my weight up as they can. And as I'm going up, I'm thinking again, how was Dan able to climb this freely? Like, even if I didn't have a backpack on, I don't think I could have climbed it freely. And I'm having help from these guys pulling probably half my body weight up. Climbing out of the truck was the hardest part. Like pushing the door up.
That door is heavy.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Dude, the fact that Dan was able to like survive that thing and just climb up the mountain and be like, I'm okay. Dude, that has God written all over, man. I don't know how you don't believe in God after something like that.
Well, just so you know, we ran out 130 feet of rope lowering you down to it.
Wow, 30 feet.
130 feet of rope.
But when you're put in those moments and that gut level reaction is, Jesus, I need you now. And then he comes through, and Dan walks away with barely a scratch. That's when you know, at least for me, those are the kinds of things that make me know that this is real. This Christian thing it's real. Because I was there. I saw the truck. I saw the ravine. He shouldn't have walked away, and he did. And the only way that could be true is because God did it.
To look into my wife's eyes and realize even more so how severe this could have been, that she would have had to continue life without me, and then my son would have had to grown up without a dad, and I couldn't even imagine. It would have been absolutely horrible to have to go through that. And I'm just so grateful that God has protected me through that He heard me. He heard my cry, and He answered my prayer right in the middle of what could have been really bad, and He rescued me. And so I'm just so grateful to have another chance at life, and to get to spend several more years with my wife and my son. And my newborn baby that God has blessed us with. That the doctor said we couldn't have a baby, and God has once again proven them wrong. Levi was the first miracle baby, and now he's 9 years old, and then we have our Mackenzie, and she's a month old, and she's just a blessing in our lives. That God said yes, you guys can have a baby, and we're in the middle of an adoption process too, and so we're still super excited about that. So we're going to end up with 3, and it's just awesome.
Yep. We're very blessed.